Welcome to the Short Funk Recording. I'm Tom Barbalet, and today a relatively heavy topic associated with genocide. I received a comment from a listener associated with whether I overuse the term genocide, associated with, well, what happened in Iraq, for example, and also the fact that I describe genocide as being an outcome of a number of conflicts. The Second World War has a few incidents of genocide. I think there's no difficult claim associated with that. What occurred in the Balkans, clearly genocide. But within conflicts and within wars, genocide's very easy to just kind of sweep under the rug. It's very easy to occur, mainly through a phenomena which I associate with September 11th. And the phenomena is associated with don't care. With September 11th, there are truther movements and various conspiracy movements associated with what happened on 9/11. And I always think those things are, well, slightly atonal associated with the events that occurred, and usually relate to the notion that, well, the US isn't really disliked by a bunch of countries and a bunch of people. It's just the government of the US acting against its own population. Through this, there's a more compelling argument, which I have some sympathy for, which is this notion of don't care, i.e. that the politicians that were in power at the time knew that something like September 11th was probably going to happen, but they just didn't care. And in the context of genocide, is there circumstances where genocide occurs not through the wanton active effort of participants, but because participants don't care or don't offer protection to a civilian population? And this is where I think the term gets a little bit interesting. Is there a genocide in cases where, combatants don't care? If there's a civil war going on, they'll just allow the combatants to, mysteriously attack a civilian population, particularly an ethnic group. And this is certainly what happened in Yugoslavia, and I don't think it's relatively controversial there to call it genocide. So from my perspective, the term genocide, or when I use the term at least, it is associated with typically ethnic cleansing or the removal of a particular ethnic population, and sometimes it happens through explicit acts of violence, but I also think there's this classification which I will call don't care genocide, where it's just allowed to occur because one of the active participants that could be protecting a civilian population just decides not to care. And that's where I think it gets particularly curious. So, in light of this listener, associated with this discussion of whether I can use the term genocide in certain conflicts, particularly associated with wars where mysteriously large percentages of the civilian population are killed, either through, well, really through a variety of means, bombing, house-to-house killings, these kind of things, garden variety stuff that occurs in wars. Well, with regards to a civilian population, and what is curious also is that these ethnic groups tend to cluster together in civilian populations, which also kind of ticks the box for genocide. You start to realise that actually genocide does have a distinct grey area, but I'd like to surface the idea of don't care genocide as being one of the phenomena which has existed through warfare through the ages, but more recently is highly applicable to what occurred in Iraq in the past, decade and a half. Tom Barbalet in San Jose, signing out.